Okay, I don't want to put this forward as a sort of advice video. I'm not a columnist. I don't offer any sort of advice on relationships, but I am a human being, and what I mean by that is that I've had experience of relationships. So I have had experience of pain, and I'm not going to go into details about my own life, but what I want to talk about in this video is how people can be so misguided in what they're looking for in a relationship, and actually, speaking plainly, selfish. This is not so much a rant about personal experience. Like I said, I don't want to talk about that, although inevitably I've had pain in my life, and it does influence my opinions on this. It's more just a general reflection on the situation. So I get the impression that some people go into relationships as very selfish motivations about what they want from it. Now, we're probably all guilty of that to an extent. I think it's only human to know what you want in a partner, what you're looking for, what sort of person you want them to be. I think that's okay. I think it's completely normal, because you sort of, it's almost like looking at a, well, actually I don't want to make that comparison. I was going to say looking for the right job, but it's not the right comparison. But you do generally, most people do have some idea of the sort of person that they want to be with. Um, it sometimes differs slightly between men and women, but not always. I think most people just want to be happy, which means they want to be with the sort of person who would make them happy. But you get, for example, a lot of girls who, young women, go into a relationship and they expect a lot from the man. They expect him to be very financially stable, loving, and so on. Now, I think those are understandable expectations. But then you get some women who I would call, that I feel have a princess syndrome. They think it's all one-sided, where they should be treated like a little princess and get everything from the man, but then when it comes to the point of him feeling down about something, or maybe he's having a rough time at work or whatever, then they don't give a shit. And in more extreme cases, they will actually run away and either find another man or just abandon him when times are tough. I think that's despicable. In a serious relationship, I think that's despicable. And without wanting to sound sexist, you get men who do likewise. You might get a man who is only interested in sex, and then when things get rough, when responsibilities involved, he runs away. That's also selfish. I don't want to preach in this video because we all have human flaws, and I don't want to sort of claim that I'm a world expert at relationships, but I'm just speaking purely as a peer and as someone else who has experienced relationships, who has been hurt. When we look for what we want in a partner, for those of you out there who are also single and also don't want to be single, I hate being single, for the record. I want a partner, but I also recognise it isn't just about what I want. If I'm expecting to find my ideal girl, ideal young woman, I know that I have to offer her something as well. That's only fair. And I think that should be the philosophy that people try to work on. I think in a relationship you can't have everything you want. You just can't, because this is not a fairy tale. In the real world, you need to accept some sacrifice, some sort of mutual understanding about things. You just can't have everything your own way. It's a childish concept, and sometimes it probably does mean tough choices, which is why I don't mind at the age of 28 still not being married. I think marriage is something that needs to be taken very seriously, so I need to make sure that I'm with the right woman if I do go down that path. And this isn't meant to be a philosophical sort of talk on marriage, but I just think that one reason maybe a lot of relationships fail these days, whether that be people going to get married or just relationships generally, is because people don't consider compromise. They don't consider that it works both ways. So you do get selfish people of both genders who go into a relationship thinking that it's all about them, and they don't consider the other person's feelings. And this has nothing to do with patronising others. It's just reflections on what I think. because, like I said, I've got my flaws myself, and it's something I'm sure I need to work on this as well. I think everyone does. But I find the relationships that tend to be the strongest and last the longest are people who listen to each other, people who, okay, it doesn't mean everything's bliss. They have arguments, they have the arguments through, but I think a card's way out is if you have one argument and then run away and say, oh, I can't be bothered with this. And I've come across some girls who have had that attitude. They've had an argument with their boyfriend and they just, oh, like, oh, bugger him, I'm running away, or like, it's ending. And I've sort of thought, well, do you not want to give it a chance? There must be some area that you can work this out. And the same applies to some men. Like I say, I don't want to sound sexist. It works both ways. I just think if you go into a relationship and you want it to be a serious relationship, you have to consider the other person's feeling. At the same time, you need to be guarded enough not to be a complete doormat and give them everything. It's reasonable for everyone to expect something in return. So sometimes I think love can blind us, and I had a relationship at one point in my life whereby I did treat the girl like a princess, and I didn't, not in the sense of giving her lots of things, but I constantly thought about how she felt about things, and it wasn't balanced. She really didn't care that much about how I felt about things. I'm not talking about general knowledge, that sort of thing. I'm talking about actual sentimental feelings. There was so many times she just hurt me and did not care. She would apologise, but I just doubted the sincerity of it, but she would go and do it again, and it was just a very blasé attitude. And I think sometimes what happens is people have been hurt so many times that they then themselves decide to take a selfish attitude. But what I would say is, if you're a guy who's been hurt by a lot of women, or you're a woman who's been hurt by a lot of men, or indeed in gay relationships, if you've been hurt, then it's reasonably guarded to have certain expectations, to be guarded and defensive about how you go about the relationship, and to show maybe evidence or signs that the other person cares. But what you shouldn't do is then take the other approach of sort of punishing your current partner for how previous partners have treated you. I think that's the case I had with my girlfriend, and you know, I'm quite sensitive about privacy and so on, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but my impression was that she had had several previous relationships. She'd certainly had more experience than me, and she had been hurt by men. So she sort of took a selfish approach to that relationship, and she didn't really care how I felt about things. So on many occasions she would just make me wait, she would leave me in the dark. There would be all sorts of little things that really got to me, and I think that might be the reason why. But it's a slightly childish approach to take, that because you've been treated in a certain way, then you're going to take it out on someone else. We have to be open-minded enough to... And the side product of that was forgiveness. I forgave her because I loved her, and that I don't think she was malicious about it. I really don't think she was trying to hurt me, but she did, and badly. It wasn't malicious, but it happened. So now I'm slightly guarded about getting into my next relationship whenever that comes, but I don't want to be a paranoid, bitter sort of person. And I think this is it takes a strong person to rise above that and think that... And I've known people, friends of mine, who have been hurt much more than I have, many more times, and they've still been mature and open-minded enough not to punish their next partner, or to become sexist and take out on the entire male or female gender. What we have to remember is not all men are the same, and not all women are the same. You just can't generalize. There may be trends, but if you go into a relationship thinking, oh, this is going to be another man, or this is going to be another woman, that's a negative sort of attitude, and it is going to be, if anything, it's going to make the other person tired. So it's completely understandable to be suspicious and to be guarded, but you have to try and get a balance between not letting that guardedness become hostility, and then you become the selfish person. And I think it takes a really mature, strong person to do that. This is what I'm trying to aim for. Because I've been hurt before, I'm not going to turn around and hurt a woman as a result and play around and I guess what I'm trying to say with this video is, in relationships, it's about some sort of mutual understanding, mutual love. Of course there'll be arguments, of course there'll be misunderstandings, but couples who really care for each other will try and get around that. And this is not meant to be puritanical. There are times, of course, it won't work out, and that's that. But that's how I feel about it. I think people need to try and be patient, loving, understanding, and forgiving. Forgiveness is important, but the forgiveness shouldn't be to a point where you're just being a doormat and letting it constantly happen.